I suppose you are in Egypt now. Are you showing your film there, or?
Yes, we're here showing our film, and it's, I think, the second or the third time we've been able to travel with it. So we took advantage of the lighter, let's say, pandemic situation here, and we just came. We're very glad to be here.
Yeah, and it's been long since the premiere at Sundance. The whole year, I suppose you heard so many questions and gave so many answers. So I will ask you only a few of which I'm sure that our audience would like you to hear talking about.
Sure, well, with pleasure.
Since the film is very complex, both thematically and also in terms of production, how did you, as a journalist by the main profession, prepare for this film in terms of filmmaking and researching?
Yeah, it was, as you said, quite a peculiar way of producing this film. We had a very small team, and partly we chose to operate, let's say, with as little people and as smaller equipment as possible, because it was very important for us to have the same atmosphere, the same family atmosphere, the same family intimacy and feeling inside the film, because this was something that is at the core of the story. This is it's a family film, and it has always been like that ever since we started. So having this in mind, we didn't use, for example, a sound engineer. Most of the scenes are filmed with only one person from our team in the room. And I think it was the best decision to make, even though sometimes maybe we compromise the value of production, having in mind that, you know, our producers, we're gonna have to find the resources to compensate for things in the post-production stage of the project, meaning that sometimes the sound wasn't as good as it could have been, or the colors, you know, like, or the lights in the shot. So we had to work a bit more in the post-production. And maybe it's worth mentioning that because I'd say 99% of the film isn't necessarily directed in a conventional way, meaning that we didn't write the scenes and then we played it with our characters. Most of the film is observational. Most of the situations shown in the film were shot in an observational way, meaning that we had to quickly adapt to the situation, to the light conditions, to the sound conditions, and so on. Something that put a lot of pressure on the final material in many ways. But anyway, I think we took the best decision. This was the only way that this film could have been produced. For example, now we're working. I'm co-directing another film with the screenwriter of the film Akasa, with Lina Avtovi, and we're doing things quite in a very different manner. Meaning that you know, each project has its own way of being filmed or researched and approached and so on. So yeah, it was one of the stakes and aims for this film to be as natural and honest as possible, just as our characters were. It's a film that's let's say, for us, it's very important that the characters are the, let's say, filmmakers. We're showing their truths. We're showing their sides of the story. We're only there to help them do that. So it would have been pretty weird to use 2 trucks full of people during the production and a million lights and everything. We didn't need that. Yeah.
Yeah, but that is exactly what you achieved, that complexity of the topics also that film touches, because there are so many topics which can be like talked about a lot. For example, the example of that complexity of the film for me is the scene where the father and the mother of the family talk to the social workers who would rather take the children to the shelter. That scene is that example because if somebody who is watching your film Sundance or somewhere where people don't know too much about shelter homes in Romania, which maybe we know a bit because that topic is not very rare in Romanian cinema. So someone could ask, what's the problem? They only want the best for children. They want to have the home, education, and that complexity is actually the main question. Is the normal life exactly what those people or those particular children needed? How did you approach that with them?
Well, it wasn't. I mean, the most difficult part of the editing process, for example, we had to edit from almost 300 hours of material, film material. So I think the most difficult, not difficult, but challenging for us on the other side of the camera was to take as many steps back as possible from, let's say, intervening in this narrative as possible, meaning that we came to the conclusion, and this thing guided us through the research and through the editing process, that it's more important to show the life through the eyes of our characters. It wasn't a question of us thinking it was better or worse. Of course, it was worse. If you ask me, a white middle class, Romanian that never had to deal with that kind of poverty. I come from poverty as well, but never like that. That's extreme. So of course it wasn't something that we consider normal for us. But it's also not something that we didn't criticize somehow in some of those scenes. But because we wanted to show again the characters' truths, we were very careful in how we balanced these, our values with our in the sense of what we represented for those characters, the wider society, the majority, and so on, and their truths, which were based on their experiences, and it would have been very unfair to deprive them from their experiences with with the majority and their truths once again. And this was the only way to emphasize with their decisions. And for example, for me, the main character of the story ended up in prison in the 90s, and he suffered a lot, and he took the decision to isolate himself in this place because he wanted to protect his family, because he wanted to protect his children. Now I am a father, and there are very few things that you don't do as a parent, or in order in order for your family, for your loved ones to be cared and protected. So from the perspective of a parent, maybe it's understandable. Maybe his truths or his experiences in the wider society were so bad that he took this radical decision to live that kind of life, which wasn't fair for the children. They didn't have access to many of the things that we consider basic. But still, it was his way of protecting his own. So we were we had to be very careful in how we frame that as well, because it should have been, and it was, and it should have been more about them than about us. Although the way I like to put it is that we wanted to make a film that shows a story that talks from within this family rather than about this family. And this was at the core of our visual approach as well, of the whole narrative, Yeah.
Yeah, but you help them a lot actually with all that approach, because the Akasa, my home, is not only the film; it's the whole social project. I don't know a lot about that, but you know, one fact that you had this multimedia project which really helped them, and they also participated in it with photography.
Of
Can you
course, they
tell
were.
us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, even the social project, you know, we try to employ the best specialists that we found in education and psychology and social assistants and doctors and so on. And every decision, even the smaller ones, were being filtered through the adults' consent. So the mother was a strong ally for us in this endeavor. Yes, and we try to do things as ethical as possible, as with the first aim was to keep the family together, to have the kids not being sent to a state institution, which would have, I think they would have gotten lost there in many ways, and the parents would probably end up homeless. And so this was the first aim. A major aim as well was to help them have a more independent life in the city, and which was quite funny because the father was always saying, "But I already was independent, like socially independent." So, well, yes, but not in the city. So we had to make sure that they can have at least a basis of a sustainable life in the big city, meaning that, you know, they needed documents, because they didn't have IDs, they needed job workplaces, they needed school, the kids needed to be enrolled in school, they needed to be integrated in the medical system, and so on. So it turned out to be something quite complex, although we started from a joke, and indeed. The multimedia project, the book that we published, where the kids are also authors. We have some brilliant photography made by them, analog ones, during their first year of transition. So they basically documented their own life for a year, which was something quite surprising. We weren't planning to publish this book, but when we saw the honesty and the power of these kids' shots. For me, it was pure art. What we had there, and pure gold in trying to understand them and their inner lives and so on. It was so much about them in those photographs. So we put them in the book. The book was nationally distributed, and every cent of selling the book, we financed this humanitarian work, but also at one point we managed to buy them a piece of land and a house just 20 minutes away from the Delta, something that gave them a massive amount of dignity, in the sense that after, 20 years of living with the fear of being evicted or taken away or being separated, they finally didn't have to deal with that anymore. So the family, I think the family grew quite a lot, starting with that point, with that basic basis, let's say. Yeah,
it's amazing, really. And since the film is released in Romania in September, and now it's playing on HBO also, any reactions by the officials, or maybe by some of those who appear in the film, or any comments about the film, about what you achieved?
I mean, the general reaction in Romania, I say, was quite good and quite similar to what we've received in the international, like the context. So it's we're starting as we speak. My colleagues are working on implementing an outreach strategy with where the film is at the center of a whole. I mean, we have some very dedicated partners that are willing to take the film and use it for outreach purposes, meaning that we're going to have screenings with authorities. We're going to go to the same places and the same institutions where those workers that you're mentioning come from, and and we're trying to address the issues shown in the film also in a larger context, in a more international context, because the realities that are being seen in this film are realities that transcend the local, let's say, social context and so on. There's a lot of those things we can find in every country in the world. Of course, keeping the proportions and keeping, Mm-hmm. So I think I'm very excited about starting this whole thing, because this was our initial intention as well. Our initial intention was to have film at the center of a wider social project.
Yeah, that's actually what I wanted to ask. What is in total achieved? But now I would like to ask you how they are. Any recent news from the family? Are they all well? What are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's we're the family and ourselves as well. We're passing through a shock right now. Just a few weeks ago, the main character of the film passed away. So it's just it's not the easiest time for them and for us as well. On a positive side, the children continue to go to school. They're quite well integrated. Vali, the main character of the film, and his brother are working as park rangers. So in the natural park, in the Delta. So they have the opportunity of using their skills and in that place and being, and they're very much appreciated by the team that's working to manage the whole park. But yes, I mean, Chica in Ake, it was like a plant. You know, when you take a plant from its natural environment and you put it in a pot and you try to, let's say, institutionalize it, you remove it from its place. It passes away. It's
Well, Radu, thank you a lot. I really would like you to have you here with the audience, because I'm quite sure all of them would like to ask you plenty of questions.
Of course.
I hope that some of the next years of Free Zone we will have you here in person to talk about maybe
next time, hopefully.
Yeah. It was a pleasure to meet you, at least this way. Have a nice time.
Yes.
And crossed fingers.
Thank you so much, and fingers crossed with the festival. I know it's not easy to organize something like that this year, especially. But like it's because of you guys and your work that we still continue to have a platform to show our work and to start the conversations we want to and we care about. So, thank you, guys.